Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh's Severe Weather here to talk to you about some destructive weather across the West Coast, across the Deep South. Just some crazy weather as we start the year 2023. I'm going to share my screen with you and talk about what is happening across the Western United States first. Then I'm going to shift east to talk about what's going on here in the Southeast. But we are looking at yet another bomb cyclone. We had the one that led to blizzard conditions around the Great Lakes region right before Christmas and Buffalo. That storm bombed out over the Great Lakes. This storm is bombing out off of the West Coast. And when I say bomb cyclone, that is not a term to scare people. That is an actual meteorological term. Low pressure, when it strengthens more than 1 millibar per hour for at least 24 hours. So basically, the storm center deepens, winds continue to pick up with it. It is considered a bomb cyclone, and that's exactly what we have here in the Eastern Pacific. This storm system is aimed at the U.S. coast. A lot of rain, moisture, wave action, even thunderstorms expected to blast parts of Northern California later today, as well as the Pacific Northwest and across southwestern Canada as well. I'm going to show you guys the jet stream here, and you'll see why we've got such intensification across the Pacific. We've got a very active jet stream streaming across the northern Pacific Ocean from Japan straight through Northern California, and it continues to be relentless with 200-knot winds over the jet stream. Just no break in the jet at all. Just a fire hose pointed directly at Northern California, straight across the Northern Pacific. Really no lull in it expected over the next couple of weeks. The GFS model continues to blast California, with finally a dip coming in the jet a little bit in about 2 weeks from now, but still a very active pattern coming, and it looks like signs of yet more potential trouble down the road coming for the state of California and for a lot of the other Northwest. Here is the satellite image, and you'll be able to see the storm center yesterday and how quickly it evolved around this time yesterday. And in the afternoon, an eye-like feature formed as the storm continued to move eastward. This is all the bombing out of that cyclone. A very quick amount of deepening in pressure. Thunderstorms were showing up on the global lightning mapper, and you can see the eye of the storm. With the pressure dropping to as low as it is now, if this were a tropical system in the Atlantic or even the Pacific, it would be at least a Category 2. So a very intense storm system, likely to continue to keep its intensity as it moves into California later on in the day today. The storm track will actually finally weaken and move north towards Vancouver Island during the day tomorrow. But you guys can see with that strong jet stream, everything's already very quickly blowing on shore into California. Let's take a look at those winds with this storm system across California. And you can see this is 4 o'clock this morning Pacific time, and we're starting to see some winds ramping up over the Northern California coast. But as we get later into this morning, around 8 or 9 o'clock, wind gusts will start to get past 50 miles per hour to maybe even 60 miles per hour. And these winds will continue to inch up the coastline, where winds may gust up to 60 miles per hour all the way up to Bandon, Oregon. So very intense winds could cause some damage to coastal communities here later this morning and especially this afternoon. It'll be windy as well across the Siskiyou Range and the Sierra Nevada. The Bay Area could see winds gusting as high as 60 miles per hour at the coastline of San Francisco, and maybe even all the way down Pebble Beach and down the Monterey Bay region as well. So a very intense storm system with that deepening pressure off the coastline. Even as the storm begins to make a turn up the coast, we continue to have an area of massive wave and wind action. So just one of the strongest storms California will have seen in the last few years is what is barreling into the coastline later on today and into tonight. So that is just the wind. This is the wave forecast from the European, shown on weatherbell.com, and I'll show you guys how quickly the wave action picks up this morning, with waves up to 70 feet off the coastline and up to 20 feet right near the coast. They will continue to barrel into the Northern California coast. So when the winds are out of the south here, parallel or perpendicular to the coastline, you can see some very rough surf is expected, causing dangerous boating conditions across the Northern California coast. These waves won't be quite as extreme across the Bay Area, but they will be pretty high over the next 2 to 3 days before we get some relaxing in the wave heights, just before more storms are expected to move in this time next week. So next Tuesday and Wednesday, we could have yet another intense storm system, according to the European. Total precipitation is going to be extreme here across California. And this is something that I don't think I've seen much of at all in my 40-year career in meteor or 20-year career in meteorology, 40 years of living. Just some extreme amounts of rain where entire parts of Northern California, multiple counties are shaded off the scale here with 15, 20 inches of rain from the GFS. That is over the next 16 days. In fact, I'm going to zoom into California and show you some more. Before I do that, I do want to point out that the Pac Northwest will also have heavy rainfall, not so much in Seattle and Portland, but in the coastal ranges. We could see amounts over 15 inches of liquid, and of course, in the higher elevations, that will be snow. But in the Bay Area, we're looking at potentially up to a foot of rain all the way up in the Napa Valley, and over a foot of rain, maybe even as much as 2 feet of rain farther up into Northern California. And of course, snow amounts are going to be insane, which I'll show you in a little bit here. I did want to zoom in, though, and give you a little bit more detail across NorCal so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. This is all just going to be for 3 different storms. The first one that moves in here the next 24 hours is going to be pretty impactful. We're going to see 2 to 3, maybe even 4 inches of rain. But more storms moving in over the weekend, and that will double those amounts to 7, 8 inches of rain in some places. And it continues right through Sunday night and Monday of next week. And yet a third storm system just continues to blast, and these numbers continue to just multiply very quickly. And we've got an extreme amount of rainfall carrying about 6 or 7 different counties in Northern California. And I will admit to you guys, I'm not a Californian, so I don't know all the county names out there. I have been out to Northern Cal. But you can see on the map, if this is your community, this is some very serious rain coming your way. Major flooding, river flooding, mudslides are going to be possible here in Northern and Central California. Just a very, very dangerous situation setting up. So yeah, extreme stuff as we look at snow now. And this is just how much snow is being added on to what's already there. You can see over the next few days the potential for 1 to 2 feet of snow across the Sierra Nevada. Not falling, but accumulating. So there'll actually be more falling from the sky. As we get on into next week, those amounts continue to climb. And over the next 16 days, we do have the potential to see over 9 feet of snow of new accumulation. That is the depth change. The actual Kuchera number, which may be a little bit high, shows potentially as much as about 17 feet of snow. Coming down at rates of 6 to 7 inches per hour here across the Northern California mountains, and quite a bit as well across the Cascades and the coastal ranges here in British Columbia. Lesser amounts across the interior of the West, but nonetheless, this will be great for ski areas in Utah and Nevada, as well as Wyoming and Idaho. Looking at Northern California, just to give you some detail here, and catch my breath, you can see that we are off the 48-inch chart here on the Kuchera ratio of the GFS. So everybody here is getting 4 feet, and a lot of places are going to get a lot more, 10 to 20 feet before all is said and done here. This pattern stays very active into probably the last week of January, although I think at that point we'll see some disruption in the jet stream based on what I'm seeing from the Madden-Julian Oscillation Forecast, the MJO. That is the circulation of storms across the Western and Southern Pacific. But nonetheless, it's going to be a record-breaking January, I think, for a lot of places here in the Western United States. So we're going to take a look now at the rest of the country. This is Tropical Tidbits, the GFS. We continue to have day 3 here of strong to severe storms over the southeast, maybe some tornadoes. We've got heavy snow falling across Minnesota, moving into Wisconsin and upper Michigan, and the interior of the Northeast will see heavy rainfall, except across Maine and New Hampshire, where we will have snow and freezing rain and sleet, accumulating several inches here as this storm moves out by Friday. You can see the big storm hitting the west here, heavy rain all the way down into Southern Cal tonight into tomorrow, with heavy snow across the mountains. That storm moves inland and weakens, which is no surprise to anybody here, and then reforms as it moves through Missouri here over the weekend, and we could see yet additional rain and thunderstorms in the deep south on Sunday. And Saturday afternoon and evening, maybe a few wet snowflakes mixed in across the Northeast, but not a big winter storm as everything is kind of out of phase. We're not going to see a coastal low forming and moving up the coast in this kind of a weather pattern, fortunately, unless you like snow, of course. Next week, we continue to see the parade of storms into the West Coast here, a big storm moving right up the Oregon coastline on Monday evening. It looks like we are going to have a bit of a break in the action across the Southeast as it turns cooler. Another storm may be forming off the coast, and this run of the GFS shows some snow moving into the big cities. I have not seen a lot of consistency, though. If you look at the model run before, that is not showing up. And the model run before that from yesterday afternoon does not show that either. It's got a heavy rainstorm over the southeast, but not moving up the coast. So until I see any consistency, really hard for me to forecast any kind of coastal low or any kind of snowstorm. I know the pattern gets a little bit more favorable than what we've seen these 2 weeks, but I think the uncertainty level is way too high to just go out and forecast something that may or may not even happen until I can see a little bit more of a positive signal in that looking like it'll happen. But anyway, the West Coast stays very busy. We've got colder air moving into the Northeast towards the middle of the month, so temperatures will return closer to average or even drop below average. And the GFS has some fantasy storms here, which may or may not unfold. As you can see, each model run is completely different. But nonetheless, the West, I can guarantee, is going to stay very active here over the next 2 weeks. Here's a look at the Southeast. We saw our tornado outbreak yesterday. Several reports of tornadoes and possible tornadoes in Alabama and Georgia, as well as Mississippi. We also had some tornadoes all the way up into central Illinois near Decatur, which was a little bit unexpected. There was just a little bit more wind shear than forecast up here, and that led to a local event. Now, as the day wears on today, we are going to see still a threat for a few tornadoes over parts of the Florida Panhandle, southeast Alabama, and especially central and southern Georgia. There could be isolated severe weather in the Carolinas as well. I don't think a widespread event. I never really thought that would be the case. Keep an eye on this in Virginia and Maryland and West Virginia as well in case this tries to trend northward. Our chances for tornadoes, though, are pretty low when you get that far north. Chances for severe wind are a little bit higher, and no hail is expected. But notice on the West Coast, we do have enough instability to fire off some thunderstorms later today. Not really a tornado threat, but maybe some locally strong winds from thunderstorms that'll barrel into the Bay Area later today into tonight, and then farther down the coast towards Big Sur as well. As we head to tomorrow, that threat for thunderstorms is more generalized across northern and central California, actually getting all the way down to the LA basin, but no severe weather expected tomorrow. Could have locally strong winds still. But by then, the storm is pulling up into the Pacific parts of Canada. We also could see a few thunderstorms over central Florida. Nothing severe at this point, but don't be completely caught off guard in case there is a severe thunderstorm warning that may come out. But at that point, we're losing a lot of the upper level support as it's moving off of the coastline. Here's the forecast radar from the HRRR this morning across the southeast. You can see intense thunderstorms still possible across northwestern Florida, southeast Alabama into Georgia and upstate South Carolina. As we get closer to 11 a.m. and noon, you can see we still have some severe weather threat down here in Georgia and Florida. Farther north, I think it'll be a little bit more isolated, but it is pretty warm out. Some of us here in the Carolinas have run the air conditioner after we blasted the heat a couple weeks ago. It's pretty crazy. But we still could have locally strong wind gusts south of Richmond down to about Raleigh and Camden and Sumter, all the way down to Hilton Head, Savannah, and into northern Florida as we get into the afternoon hours. But I think the morning is going to be more active than the afternoon throughout the day today. By the time we get into this evening, the severe weather threat is pretty much all but gone, except maybe in northeastern Florida down to Ocala. And then as we head into tonight, things are quickly falling apart as we lose support for any kind of severe weather. Now, in the upper Midwest, we've seen significant ice, and lighter amounts of ice are still possible through upper Michigan. But in Ontario, north of Toronto, we do have the threat for ice overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. Also across the Northeast, let me show you guys New England here. We do have the threat for ice in places that got buried in snow just a couple weeks ago. Temperatures are going to be struggling to get past freezing, but definitely a threat for ice overnight tonight and first thing tomorrow morning across northern New York, with lighter amounts across Vermont, New Hampshire, and maybe western Maine. Snowfall, though, is still falling across the Minneapolis area. We're going to see some places topping a foot here and across Wisconsin as well. What will happen is this low pressure system gets sheared away from kind of the main event and continues to spin. And with the upper level energy we have left behind, there will still be additional accumulation of snow later today through tonight. And some places off of the lakes could see 8 to 12 inches of new snow through the night tonight. And also across areas north of the freezing rain, we are looking at heavier snow across parts of northern Ontario, northeast of Huron, and the Georgian Bay as well. Amounts could accumulate south and east of the Great Lakes as we get to tomorrow night into Friday morning, but they'll be fairly light. We're not looking at a lake effect snow setup. This is just some some upper energy left behind and cold air kind of wrapping in behind this storm system. Looking at the Northeast and in particular New England, amounts could be a few inches here by tomorrow night and into the day Thursday. I'm sorry, that's tonight and into the day Thursday, and then wrapping up on Friday with a few more inches of snow across parts of Maine and then southern and central parts of New England, but not Connecticut, not Boston, and certainly not New York City or New Jersey. Unfortunately, we're going to miss out on snow here. Taking a look farther into the picture here, let's take a look at the upper level pattern and see if there's any possible pattern breakdown here of this massive ridge that's been taking over a lot of the eastern U.S. And the central United States. This ridge has been responsible for near record warmth, for a lot of rain down south, severe weather, and just a massive thaw, as much of the Buffalo area has very little snow left on the ground. After all the snow we got here right around Christmas time, things have quickly melted off. You can see a massive trough continuing to barrel into the west. This will actually continue to remain in place over the next 2 weeks. It weakens a little bit with respect to average. Across the east, we continue to see ridging across the Gulf of Mexico and Texas, but some troughing off the East Coast. This does not necessarily signal an East Coast storm, but it does signal cooler weather across the eastern United States. What we really need to have happen is this trough in the west needs to move east, and we need to see a ridge forming in the west. Until a ridge forms on the west coast, it's not going to get super cold across the east. And you guys can see right on into early February, yes, we are going to have normal winter weather with temperatures still on the cool side, but nothing extreme. So we're not looking at anything like what happened in December right before Christmas time. And I'll show you the temperature forecast as well. And let's take this back to now. Obviously, most of the country is still above average. We see that warmth starting to diminish as cooler air comes down from Canada into the southeast by the end of next week. The west remains on the cool side due to all the clouds and rain that we're dealing with, heavy snow in the mountains. But according to the GFS extended ensembles, we don't see any widespread cold until potentially late in the month of January, when we finally see that trough that was off the west coast move inland to the Rockies. This isn't a super warm signal for the Northeast. It's kind of in transition, but we do see some cooler weather coming. So the chances for snow should start to climb, but we need to get more than just cooler air in place. We also need to see a more favorable storm track. So until that happens, I don't think we're dealing with a super exciting winter weather pattern here anywhere in the mid-Atlantic or southeast. It'll get cooler, fortunately for us, but it's not looking like it's going to be a winter storm for the southeast anytime soon into the beginning parts of February. In fact, it's going to get a little warmer as we head into the month of February. So I'll have more on that, of course, in the future videos that I'll be sending for you guys. But if you could like this video, add any comments that you have, and subscribe, I really would appreciate that. And I just appreciate everybody's time. My thoughts and prayers are with everybody on the West Coast that may be dealing with property damage. And I'm a believer, and I believe that it's important to have a community of believers that can pray for others that are going through storms in life. James 5:15 states that, and the prayer of faith will save the one who is sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. And that is spoken to me as somebody who is looking to start the year completely clean, completely, I'm not going to say free of sin, because that's just not possible. As humans, we all commit sins, but somebody who's going to be forgiven and appreciative of what's been given to me. And if you guys have any prayer requests, if you have something weighing down on you, maybe a family member, maybe a situation that's come up in life, I'm happy to pray for you. Please feel free to share in the comments if you'd like, or you can say, I want an unspoken prayer. I'm happy to do that for you as well. But I want to let you guys know that I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this to serve the greater good and the community of both believers and non-believers. I obviously would love to see you be a believer, but that's, of course, going to be up to you. But all I can do is pray for you. And I really appreciate your time today. I love you all. God bless you, and have a wonderful day.